in concert in America with Turn to Stone, which is also one of the tracks on Take Two, the Whistle Test album for Christmas 1976. And if you want another taste of it, in fact, the close down sequence on BBC Two tonight will be playing another track. Okay, so yeah. And talking of new albums, the new George Harrison has just been released, called 33 1/3. And it's good to be able to say that the album has far more adrenaline and more body, if that's the right word, and certainly a greater sense of purpose than his recent recordings. And also good to see that opinion reinforced by some good reviews at last. Well, we met up with him last week and recorded a conversation which we'll be seeing in a couple of minutes' time. But first of all, here's a marvellously light-hearted piece of film featuring one of the tracks from the LP. This song is the track from George Harrison. George Harrison, and this song, which explains a great deal about what's been happening to George Harrison over the past 3 or 4 years, really. George, welcome to the programme.
Thanks.
And let's talk about that situation, first of all. How has the My Sweet Lord situation resolved itself now?
Well, it's funny, actually, because since 1971, this thing has been going on, you know, the talk about the copyright. And at that time, well, 1972, the attorneys from both sides got together and were talking about, to save the problem of having to go to court and do all that, of just giving them some money. And they were talking around $200,000. I just found out last week, since it went to court, and I was requested to go and take my guitar, which was really terrible. I had to stand up in court with my guitar. So all these people grilling me and talk about how you write a song, which is really difficult because every song is slightly different anyway. But anyway, since that, it's down to about $50,000. So it's really good in a way. It's settled for much more, I mean, much less than what we were originally going to give them anyway. Mm. But it did cause a bit of a problem because, especially like in America, the disc jockeys are all on top of it now, pulling every song apart. It's like Spot the Tune, you know, because so many songs are like so many other songs. We ended up with musicologists in court where we had about 25 songs, all with the same structure and the same notes. What happened, they blew up the, what they call motive A, which was da-da-da. They had that blown up about 6 feet square in court, and they kept talking about these 3 notes, and the musicologists came on and played like about 15 or 20 songs, all with the same notes. But the judge also was funny, talking to my attorney just last week. He said, well, actually, I like both of the songs. My attorney said, what are you talking about? You said it was the same song. And the judge said, oh, what I really mean is I like the same song with the 2 sets of lyrics. So it's, you know, it's something that I had to treat it, you know, positively or negatively, so I decided to do it this way. Because once you start nitpicking, and there's going to be a lot of that going on, then you find within every song, I mean, if we had time, we'd go into, I mean, just songs on the charts this week that just sound like everything. But
what about Dark Horse, George? Because now you seem to be fairly happily settled now with Warner Brothers. Yeah. After problems there too, really. Well,
it wasn't a problem with Dark Horse, really. The main problem was with the owner, or one of the owners of A&M, Jerry Moss. And that's a long, complicated story. You know, but anyway, it was resolved for the better, you know. It was just better that I made the move, particularly before I gave them my first album, because it's important for me that, you know, I have a lot of enthusiasm. And anyway, so we moved, and we just settled that thing.
Yeah, I get the feeling that you're very pleased with the way Dark Horse is going, because the roster of artists you've got is very small.
It is,
and I'm wondering how much you relate sort of the Dark Horse situation to the old Apple situation.
Well, really, Dark Horse came into existence because at the time I was working on 2 different projects which were really Apple. And then Apple was slowly getting swept under the carpet when we got rid of Alan Klein as the manager. Ringo and I were really involved doing a lot of that. John had moved to the States and he'd sort of got himself out of the picture, and Paul too, since Paul sued John, Ringo and I. And it actually took me years to get involved with Apple, but by the time I was into it then, the others all got out of it. So I was still involved with different product, and Apple was going down the tubes, So really I had Dark Horse because I had to have some sort of continuity with the people I was recording at the time, which was then the Splinter and the Ravi Shankar's, the ballet. That album was called Shankar Family and Friends. So Dark Horse really came from that, but I wanted to keep it small. And also, in the last 2 years, I had, the main problem for me was trying to coordinate everything. So what I did, I really ended up getting it organized so that it is pretty smooth now, in order to give myself the chance to become an artist again, because I was, what with Alan Klein, all those sort of things, I was becoming a lawyer or an accountant. So I just shut off completely from all of that, locked myself in the studio as an attempt to become a musician again.
So let's talk about your new album then, George. I mean, first of all, I think it's brilliantly titled, actually. I love the title, 33 and a Third.
Yeah.
And the observation that I've got to make of it, general observation, is that suddenly it's so relaxed sounding, you know, because I was a little bit disappointed with the last couple, because they sounded very tense and down.
Well, that
actually.
last album in particular was what I was talking about. I was up to here with other things happening, and I was unhappy about that also because, first of all, I had to record it in Los Angeles because of other work that I was doing at the same time, and in the studio there, you know, I have a studio here at home which is based upon all the years and different studios we worked in England, like the Abbey Road and Olympic, all the situations we worked through. I built this studio with the basic facilities based upon all the things we ever needed, and to go back into a studio which just has, you know, the basic thing and that's all, you know. So it was, from a technical point of view, very limiting to what I wanted to do. And at the same time, I was going through a pretty heavy period, you know, just for many reasons, like personal things and business things. And so it was, in a way, it was a heavy album, you know. But this one is, I think I got myself more together, you know, both from the business and the personal side, and I got myself more relaxed. And I think that shows in the record. It
does, I think it does too. How closely did you collaborate with Tom Scott on the album?
Well, I tried to get Tom, actually tried to get him to co-produce with me, but Tom is really busy. You know, he writes and records the music for all of Barretta TV, Starsky and Hutch, and he's making his own album and producing some other album all at the same time. I'm playing on mine, so my original intention was to have him co-produce with me, but it ended up that he more or less just did what he did on the last album, which was he writes down chord sheets for the musicians just to make it a bit quicker on the basic session, and then overdubs his horn parts and then left. But Tom's really good to work with. You know, he's very technical musician, whereas I'm more like a, you know, jungle musician. So he writes it all down, whereas I just hear it, you know.
It interested me too to see that there are 3 keyboard credits, particularly seeing Billy Preston and Gary Wright in harness, which is almost an unusual sort of combination.
Everybody's interested in Gary Wright all of a sudden. I noticed somebody reviewing it saying, keyboard wizard Gary Wright, they've ignored him for 10 years.
That's right.
But now, you know. Anyway, the cause of that was that Billy, who was originally supposed to play on all the basic tracks, was with the Rolling Stones. So I found I didn't have a piano player, and as it happened, this guy David Foster, who's in the band Attitudes, arrived in London. I collared him, and he played on 3 tracks, and then Billy came over after the Stones' Earl's Court show. He played on this song, One Take, drunk out of his mind. He just listened to it, went right into it. That's a good thing about Billy. So Tommy recommended this guy called Richard T. He's played on, you know, just millions of albums out of New York, top session guy, but he plays similar style to Billy. So the 3 of them ended up playing. Then Billy came back again and put some synthesizer and piano, and Gary just passed through one day, Gary Wright, and played on a song called Beautiful Girl.
Are you a prolific writer, George? Do you spend a long time on songs?
No, it depends. Some songs come very quick, and some songs I don't really know how they come, you know. There's, I suppose, towards the end of the Beatle period, I had such a stockpile of songs. Like, some people think I started writing after the Beatles, but I actually was writing through from 66, 67, 68, 69. and it was a little bit like being constipated, you know, and then finally being allowed to go. And on All Things Must Pass, I just started recording. I found I had like 17 or 18 basic tracks done. I thought I better hold on here, because it normally takes very little time to do the basic tracks, and then you just get so pleased with yourself, and you get into overdubbing, and it goes on and on and on, and then you have the mixing too. So there's like 3 basic stages to making an album. But I wrote such a lot of songs that were all stockpiled, and since then I write in, you know, like if I was to go away, take a break, I could write a lot of songs. I tend to, because my life's been so crazy with all these legal problems. I don't just mean the Sweet Lord, but this thing's been going on for years, Alan Klein. So it's very hard to be productive then, you know?
So just finally, George, you know, talking about your own songs, it is really quite unusual for you to record somebody else's, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's,
well, I did it in the old days, did some Chuck Berry and Carl Perkins, you know, back in the 60s, but in the 70s I've only, I think, done about 2 or 3 songs. I did the perverted version of Bye Bye Love, but this song, True Love, I don't really know why, it just stuck with me, you know. I was just playing it one day, it just sounded good, and I put down the track, and the track sounded, it made it even sound better, and it just seemed so comical, you know. The song to me is both a comedy, at the same time it's a serious song, you know, depending which way you want to take it.
George Harrison, messing about on the river with True Love. And thanks, George, for a really enjoyable afternoon.